All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the second time this morning I'm doing this flight. I got an hour into it and it crashed. Software dumped me back out the windows, so looked like it may have been a conflict of drivers, which I believe is now resolved, so hopefully it doesn't do that again. And that's the first time it's done it since I've had the software, so anywho, all ground checks have been completed. We're here in Nuuk, Greenland, I believe is how you pronounce that. And we're departing straight out on runway 04. So we're departing off to the northeast. We're headed to the airport Birk in Reykjavik, Greenland. And we'll be flying an ILS approach to runway 19. So last flight, had to come in blind with no instruments, doing everything by sight, and I just about bounced us off the pavement. So was a successful landing, but it was a hard one, and we'll try to avoid that today. Looks like we're gonna have a lot of clouds moving in. Looks like a storm is forming off the coast of Iceland, where we're gonna be headed over. So when I got an hour into this flight the first time this morning, the skies were pretty clear, a little hazy up at 28,000, but nothing that I could see with the eye, or nothing was on radar. So let's hope it stays that way for the bulk of the flight, but I think the clouds are going to start thickening up once we get out over the ocean, so we'll check it hour by hour, minute by minute, and hopefully everything stays calm and clear. Anyways, we're prepped for flight. All pre-flight checks are complete, and we should be off the ground. Just a note, we are at max weight, and oh, before I forget, I forgot to set fuel. So let me go ahead and take care of that really quick. Let's see, where am I looking? I'm looking for fuel. Run that up to max. Oh, so it looks like it's going to make me set all this stuff again. So let's set rear baggage. Oh, sorry. At 100 pounds. And let's set a couple passengers here, which would be my two kids, my two daughters. So, alright, there we are once again, and let's, yeah, we're about 130 pounds short of max, so definitely pushing the limits today on today's flight. So, anyways, we should be safe in terms of fuel. But the fuel consumption on this airframe and others within the software is incorrect. When I'm fully trimmed at cruising altitude, flight consumption should be around 37 gallons per hour, and the best I've seen is 56, and it seems to be relatively continuous regardless of pitch, prop pitch or prop trim, fuel trim, or fuel throttle settings. So anyways, please hang on and prepare for departure. We'll be off the ground here in just a few minutes. Okay, brake set, throttle up. And turbine is spooling up, brakes released. Pitch the nose down. We're gonna keep our wheels on the ground here and get max speed before we depart. So, all right, here we go. Wheels up. Nose up. Here comes our gear. Our gear is up and fully locked.
Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, is at 700 feet, climbing 9,000 feet.
Dollar Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, center altimeter 29er decimal 62, continue to Kagak as planned. Dollar 019er, climb and maintain flight level 200.
Alright.
Climb and maintain flight level 200, Dollar 019er.
Let's set our ascent rate to 1,500 feet per minute. With our current load and our current weight, that'll be a safe speed where we're not going to lose a whole lot of airspeed on the way up. Since we've got some wind, right now it's going to be a headwind, but as we get further up and further to the east, it turns into a tailwind. Today's flight is calling for a flight plan of 3 hours and 21 minutes, but with the tailwind I'd expect to land over in Iceland at Reykjavik about 2 hours and 45 minutes to 3 hours, but we'll see how everything pans out as we proceed through the flight. So if you want to take a look out the window, there's some beautiful scenery down there. I've never been to a whole lot of places on the planet, so I have to live vicariously through the eyes of others and the eyes I can see through the software. So looks like it would be a beautiful place to visit. We're going to fly through a bunch of chop for about the first 15-20 minutes. Everything should start to get bumpy as we increase our altitude here. Or at least it was an hour ago when I started part 1 of this adventure. So this video will be the 4th in the Around the World series, where I've departed from not my hometown, but close to it, Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. The first leg was to Westfield, Massachusetts, which is where I was born. And then from there we flew over to Sydney, Nova Scotia, and kind of had a interesting landing there. Actually ran out of fuel about 6 miles off the end runway. So that's when I started looking into fuel consumption. And if you look here, our fuel consumption now is 67 gallons per hour as we're at full throttle or close to it on our ascent. And I'm going to push the throttles up till we reach about 95% output, or torque, which is directly related to propeller output. So you can see our gallons per hour rate is increased to 72. So later, when we are at cruising altitude and we trim our prop, we trim the angle of the blades and the amount of fuel it gets. That number should come down, but I noticed earlier it never dropped below 56, which is incorrect. According to the published specifications for the TBM 930 airframe, the consumption should be around 37 to 38 gallons per hour when trimmed for cruise at 28,000 feet. So I know barometric pressure has some impact on that, but in this situation I don't think it's quite correct. So I can see burning 42 gallons per hour, but not 55 plus. But hey, I'm often wrong a lot, so I could be in this situation as well. Just have to see. So if we check weather radar, we're free and clear, no clouds for 200 nautical miles. So if we see anything once we get above this light cloud layer here, we'll probably see clouds forming once we are on the east coast of Greenland. So sure is turning out to be a beautiful day, and love that view out the window. Just out of curiosity's sake, just check this is exactly what I was seeing before for performance. We're maxed at 60 because that's all my 1080p monitor will allow. So you can see here we're starting to get bumpy. We have crosswind at 35 nautical miles per hour. So once we get to about this point here on the map, in about another 45 minutes, I believe, no, half hour, roughly 25 minutes, I think, should turn into more of a tailwind, or at least did earlier. And once that happens, we'll actually pick up airspeed and be able to travel a little bit faster. You can see our airspeed indicator is going kind of nuts, and that's because these winds are pushing us all over the place, and autopilot has to make corrections to keep us pointed in the right direction. So about ready to pass through flight level 120, 12,000 feet. Some more views of the landscape down below. Just a little bumpy. That should smooth out here over the next 10 minutes or so. I'm going to put the microphone on mute, and I'll be back in a few minutes.
1019er climb and maintain flight level 280.
Climbed and maintain flight level 280 Doppler 019er.
Alright, the coffee cup is full and should be good to go for a while, so yeah. Alright, so once you in the United States anyways crossed 18,000 feet, in the past I had issues after the last update with the software telling me I was at the incorrect altitude even though indicated on the gauges I was. And it turns out that the update is actually following some real-world navigation, something I didn't know about, and I thought I was doing something wrong or the software was glitching out. But it turns out in the United States and several countries, there's certain flight limits in which you have to reset your barometer. In the United States, it's 18,000 feet, and I'm not sure how many other countries worldwide follow that standard. Some it's 11,000, 13,000. But once you cross that altitude, all aircraft are required to set their barometers to ground level pressure of 29.92 inches under mercury. And this is so all aircraft are flying at the same altitude. So if our instruments say we're at 24,000 feet, everyone, if they have their barometer set to the same pressure, will be at the same altitude. So it's for safety and, well, for safety. So the ground keep us all separated and prevent us from crashing into one another. I don't have air traffic turned on. But I think if it was, where we're flying today right now, headed to Iceland from Greenland, I don't think we'd see a whole lot of traffic over here, but I could be wrong. So maybe there's a lot of air traffic over Greenland that I'm not aware of. Total flight time today is 3 hours and 31 minutes, but it looks like we're picking up a tailwind again. If you look at our indicated airspeed, or our true airspeed, right now it's 226 knots, but here in about another 10 minutes that's going to start increasing as this wind turns into more of a easterly flowing current, and we start picking that up, and it's going to boost our airspeed quite a bit. So I'm going to make one trim adjustment to both prop and fuel while we're still on our climb. It shouldn't affect our airspeed too much. Once we're at 28,000, we'll pick up some airspeed, probably level off around 200 knots as indicated. And that tailwind should push us on up to about 330 knots, so we'll be cruising at a good velocity. So we're at almost 26,000 feet, flight level 260. 2,000 more feet to go into the climb, and once we get there and level off, we'll start building our airspeed back up again. So I'm going to advance the throttles just a little bit, just to keep our airspeed positive. We don't want to lose too much of that. You can see every time we get hit by a massive draft, our airspeed bounces around a lot. We don't want that getting too low, so don't want to lose too much of our forward speed. Here's that haze I was talking about. It's kind of hard to tell the sky from the ground because the ground's all white. If this were a real aircraft, we'd probably want to be wearing sunglasses at this point. If we didn't, we'd probably start to experience snow blindness, where all the, I'm not sure if it's the rods or cones in our eyes kind of get washed out by that color, and everything just appears to be white. dangerous situation to run into. And something as simple as sunglasses prevents that. So I think if this was a real world, we'd have our sunglasses on. Probably would have had them on since takeoff. We're approaching flight level 280, leveling out at 28,000 feet. And you can see our airspeed is starting to build back up. Once we get up to cruising speed of around 200 to 205 nautical miles per hour, we'll go ahead and trim the engine out for our cruise. Keep an eye out for weather. I'm not sure what we'll see, but I think once we reach the eastern side of the continent, we'll start to pick up some clouds. I'm just not sure what the tops of those clouds will be. The map in the software that we use for planning, flight plan and stuff like that, it doesn't show us what the wind speeds are like over the ocean, just over land. So I'm not sure if we'll have a tailwind all the way, but according to the data over Iceland, there's some tailwinds around the coast, so I'm pretty sure we're just going to be a tailwind all the way over. If it is, we'll gain time against the flight plan. If it's not, we'll either be right on time as according to plan, or we'll be a little bit late. But right now, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we'll have an on-time arrival of 3 hours and 21 minutes, or just something shortly under that. We're currently 24 minutes into the flight almost, and stay tuned. Both trimmed. I actually over trimmed one of those earlier, and that's what the warnings were all about, so I just had to reset the throttle. And right now we're about 85% output on propeller torque. I'm going to let the airspeed build up a little bit more, and we'll trim that out, and we'll see if our gallons per hour consumption rate goes down. But right now you can see we're at 54 GPH on our consumption, and that should be much lower than that. So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people on different airframes, whether it's jet or propeller, experiencing similar things where they go and end up running lower on fuel than they expect. Not the last flight, but the flight before that, I actually ran out of fuel 6 miles before end of runway. And I had enough fuel, according to the flight charts, to get me about 200 nautical miles past where I was heading. So, yeah, I thought it was my mistake, but it was actually the software. So that resulted in a water landing, but it was a successful one. So I figure any landing you can walk away from is probably not a bad one. So, it has turned out to be a wonderful day out there. Looking looks perfectly clear, a little hazy, but nothing too serious. And there's nothing on radar, so. And you can see that wind is turning more into a tailwind. We've gone from 313 to 317 nautical miles per hour, as indicated. It's actually a true airspeed, or as indicated, airspeed is 205 nautical miles per hour. The wind is giving us quite a bit of a boost, so. Everything is free and clear. No mountains or anything unexpected. No clouds or bad weather lurking around. So it should be pretty smooth from this point on out. As we turn, we have our next checkpoint coming up here in just a few minutes. I believe it's probably about 5 minutes or less. 4 minutes and 25 seconds to be exact. But we'll probably make a slight turn to the east, and we might pick up a few knots of airspeed when we do that. So looks like our actual airspeed right now is 318 nautical miles per hour, and we'll see if that goes up by 1 or 2. I believe earlier the true airspeed was indicated at 323 knots, so we'll see if we can get a similar boost. If not, we're flying at the published cruising airspeed, so not a bad thing. I bumped the throttle, so that was my mistake. Actually bumped prop trim and had to get that all reset and retrimmed, but we should be back on track. And it looks like a very unrealistic 59 gallons per hour is what our consumption rate is. So. more changes to throttle, and looks like 54 gallons per hour is the new rate of consumption, so we'll see. We should have more than enough fuel. Kind of a short flight today at 3 hours and 21 minutes. Total distance traveled, I believe, is right around 800 and something to 900 nautical miles total. So I'd expect to land with the fuel tanks at 50%, but we'll see what the numbers are when we land. I do know that we have more than enough to get us there, so I'm not too worried about landing empty. Just crossed over about a minute ago onto the next point. Looks like we're continuing on the same bearing, so there was no change in direction. And there's probably no one on the ground anywhere close to tell us any information until we clear the island and reach the eastern side. We should start getting more directions once we're over there in the next probably about an hour or so. So while we have some time on our hands, I think when we begin our initial approach, the ground is going to instruct us to descend down to 15,200 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that number dialed in. So 15,200. I'll just put in 15,000. Once instructed by the ground, if I'm too low or too high, I'll make an adjustment to it, but that'll give us the ballpark where they're going to ask us to descend to. So after about 2 million spins of the mouse wheel here, we'll have that number set in. I wish there was a gross adjustment and a fine adjustment. Alright, 15,000. So 13 minutes passed where the software crashed the last time I was making this flight, and hopefully everything is stable from this point forward. I'm not sure what caused the crash. When I ran a diagnostic, it said I had a driver that was out of date. It didn't allude to what driver it was, however. I just updated it, and it kind of took care of everything automatically behind the scenes and just gave me an update okay. Not sure if it was a sound driver, video driver, some kind of processor driver, memory handler, or what, but got my fingers crossed we don't crash out again. And yeah, it's never fun when that happens. So let's look at our VFR map, or our ground map, and get an idea where we're actually at here. So it looks like we're a little bit past a halfway point. It's probably the ocean way out there in the horizon that we see, and some mountains off in the distance there. So we should be hitting the coast here maybe another half hour. So if we look down here to this checkpoint, which is on the eastern point of this inlet here, we have 22 minutes and 25 seconds. So here in about another 15 minutes we should be approaching the coast, and we should see signs of civilization. And I imagine around that point, perhaps when we transition across this line here, we're just moving from this airspace into this one. And I'm not sure who controls either of those airspaces, but usually when you come to within a few nautical miles of crossing this on either side, you'll get instructed by the ground to make any appropriate changes to speed, altitude, pressure, those types of things on your instruments. And I'd expect to be hearing something from the ground here in about another 10 minutes or so. Looks like once we hit this waypoint, we kind of turn slightly southerly to the southeast, and we continue across the open Atlantic at this point. So that's going to take us through 1, 2, 3 checkpoints. This checkpoint rate, let me see if I can zoom in without losing that. This checkpoint right here is where we'll probably begin our initial approach. They'll have us descend on down to 15,000 feet. And right here is where we'll actually start preparing everything for our initial approach. So we're coming on into this this inlet, and we're making a southerly turn for our landing at the airport. So let's check something out really quick here on the map. Zoom in. You can see we don't see any ground indicators for nav stations or anything. If we zoom in over here, it doesn't appear to be a whole lot of activity as compared to over here. You can see zoomed out, we see several navigational aids, and as we zoom in we'll actually start to see even more of those. And most of these are just checkpoints or waypoints for general navigation. However, when you see one of these ground circles, that's a ground station of some sort, usually radio communications and radar and those sorts of things. So, and these are airports, so Keflavik and Reykjavik, and there's another airport, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I believe that airport is here or somewhere towards the eastern side of the island. Might be right here. So anyways, with the tailwind we'll hope for an early arrival, but not sure how much it's going to affect us. So we've already lost some of that wind speed. It was up to about 45 knots earlier. It's down to 29, and you can see our airspeed is remaining at a constant value of 317 nautical miles per hour. So I'm going to increase throttle by a little bit. We're at 85% propeller torque, which is measured right over here, and I've bumped that up to 90, so just want to make sure we stay on the positive side of airspeed, and this is our opportunity to build a few nautical miles per hour on top of where we're at already. So let's see if we can climb on, get up to around 330 knots, and that'll shave another few minutes off the flight time for today. So you notice it's pretty moon out there. Everything's clear on this side. Let's take a minute to appreciate that. That's pretty realistic looking. So we're all free and clear over left wing, over the right wing, and you notice ahead there is this impenetrable wall of clouds we're going to fly slap or dab into. And I don't think we have the legs to fly over them, so we'll go through them. Should make things interesting. We'll be in the blind once that happens, so hopefully the winds don't kick up. Sometimes we get these brutal crosswinds that cut across our wings, either north, south, east, west. It doesn't really matter. But when it comes and hits us on one side or the other of the aircraft, what happens is it can potentially kick autopilot off, turn it off, if there's too many inputs to the yoke, whether those are aileron inputs or elevator inputs. Aileron turns us left, right, elevator is up, down, and rudder is kind of skewing us on a vertical plane, left and right. But once those reach a grotesque value, I'm not sure what that is exactly, autopilot will no longer be able to maintain control of the aircraft, and it just disengages. And all you have to do is just re-engage it by pushing your nav mode button here. Anyways, not sure if that's going to happen on the flight, but we'll keep an eye out for it once we enter those clouds. So there's a little bit of danger there. We know the ground is flat because right here there's no mountains or structures or anything that we could definitely fly into. So it's nice having this nav aid and have radar to tell us what's in front of us. But when we fly into clouds, we lose all visual contact of everything, so it can be quite disorienting to know or not know where you are relative to the ground. So rely on instruments to keep us flying flat, straight and level, and on course. Anyways, we'll keep an eye out on this cloud formation as time moves forward, and kind of zoom in here and let's take a look at them. Some of that chop that I had mentioned, and expect that to pick up as we approach this mass of clouds. Yeah, our max service ceiling is 31,000 feet. I've never pushed it past that. I'm not sure exactly what our maximum altitude would be for the airframe, but generally not a good idea to exceed maximum limits on things like that. So I'm not going to try to do anything cute and fly over them, because I know we can. So, yeah. we're approaching that that junction of the two airspaces. We're about ready to cross over. Curious to see if we'll pick up anything from a ground station giving us information on our flight. I'd expect there to be a change in barometric pressure, and we can test that. We can look at our barometer here and set for 29.92. We can't test it right now, but once we descend below 18,000 feet, we'll be able to pick that back up again. So scratch that idea. We don't need to make any adjustments to it at this point. So it looks like here in a few miles we're going to lose contact with the ground, with the exception of small openings here and there. So it looks like we might get lucky and get on top of these clouds. Let's see if there's anything on radar. So there's something. There's something that has enough precipitation in it to give us an echo on radar. They are right on lateral view. So it looks like they're slightly below us, not by much, but I'll take it. Much better than losing visual of the grounds. So we'll keep the center display on weather radar for a little while and see how things shake out. I'd expect as we head further east for the clouds to thicken up. I'm not sure what wind is going to be like at altitude once we get close to Iceland, but the ground winds are pretty calm according to the weather maps I saw during pre-flight planning and stuff, so we'll see. One thing that's kind of interesting is because there's so much snow down there, it's hard to tell where the clouds begin and the land ends, which I think is kind of neat. So you can see everything over here is all white. Everything over here is all white. Here's some of that haze we were flying through when we were ascending to flight level 280. But it all kind of blends into me as just one big mass. It's hard to distinguish one from another. So, yep. We have the sun rising over our right wing. And I'd imagine at this latitude we're not going to see a whole lot of the sun over the horizon. I believe sun sets around 5 p.m., so local time. So, yeah, I think that's as high as the sun gets. I believe the word is perihelion. It's if you travel across the sky, even though it remains in place, it appears to travel because of the orbit of the planet. But I don't think it's going to get much higher than slightly above horizon as we move further east. So further in the flight, once we start headed towards the equator, I'd imagine to see this higher in the sky. But since we're flying right now in late fall and early winter, I'm not sure what to expect in like northern Europe or in the southern hemisphere. So it'll be interesting to see firsthand what changes in the sky in relation to where we are on the planet. So, and I'm in no hurry to circumnavigate the globe. I'm not trying to get this done in a month. We're going to take the lazy route and go from here to here to here to here, and as many interesting points of interest as we can find. So I think this endeavor might take 1 or 2 years. flights on Saturdays. And if I'm lucky, if I'm on vacation or something like that, I'll be able to crank out a few more videos. And sometimes the stars line up, and sometimes on a weekday, if I wake up early feeling fully refreshed, I can do a short hour and a half, 2-hour flight. So try to make up some ground. I ended up losing almost a month of record time and flight time because Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 was going through an update, and unfortunately it wasn't updating for me, and I didn't know why. I started looking into it, and it turns out that for most people, because this software is both on PC and Xbox, there was a critical update to the Xbox store to allow Xbox users to access the software, and those settings were mimicked on PC as well, which is fine. But it would be nice if the emails were sent out to customers that we have to register when we install the software to say, hey, expect this in 2 weeks on this date when the software update rolls out. Here's some tips on how to do some things. I'm not going to say fix, but do some things, load this software or that software so you don't run into these issues. So anyways, I updated the Xbox app, and I still wasn't connecting, and it was giving me some trouble. And I was about ready to remove the software and reinstall it, which is kind of a pain. The software is kind of large. The file size, I think, is 125 gigabytes. So it doesn't take too long to download that with a broadband connection. Probably about 2.5 hours, I think. I think the fastest it downloaded for me, and I've downloaded it 3 times in the last year, was about 1 hour and 40 minutes. And the longest about 2 hours and 20, depending on web traffic and those things. However, there's a bunch of updates, and to apply all those updates, that would tack on probably about another 2 hours. So it's about a 5-hour journey to go from software is not installed to fully installing it. Then if you have any mods, which is software by third-party companies that allows you to do different things, different paints on the airframe, or different interiors, or navigational aids, those sorts of things, all those have to be reinstalled. So however much time it takes you to do that. For me, it's just a simple driver for my flight controls. That's the only extra thing I have installed, along with a package for different paint skins for the outside of the airframe. So for me, it would be about a 5-hour or 5.5-hour journey to go from not installed to reinstalled. So anyways, I was about ready to do that, and I said, well, let's just give it another week. And the following week I tried to update it through the Microsoft store. It still wouldn't update, and I said, well, let's just try to launch the software one more time, and I did. And then the software started to launch, and it got halfway through, and it kind of like force quit. I said, well, that's unusual. And I went back to the Microsoft store, and it was showing me a message, and it said, software corrupt, you need to install. And my first thought was, oh God, I don't want to go through this lengthy process, but okay. So I was about ready to grin down and bear it, and all of a sudden the error message disappeared. And I said, okay, that's different, because that usually doesn't happen. So I rebooted the computer and relaunched the software, and lo and behold, it started to apply the updates that I required, which was update version 6, I believe. And once it updated that within the software, which I was told it wouldn't do, everything was fine moving forward. So I'm not sure what that really means or why it shook out that way, or if Microsoft just at that point in time had added some type of aid to help people with the update. But once it updated, everything was fine, with the exception of that one crash, the desktop, that I had about 2 hours ago. So anyways, everything's been fine since, and fingers crossed. So it looks like, according to our little navigation insert right down here, we're about ready to cross over the coast, the east coast of Greenland. So farewell, Greenland. It was fun flying, and you have a great day. Look at those clouds. They look like mountains. Kind of looks like a brain, actually. Those look like clouds. It looks like a brain. Clouds, brain. Clouds, brain. Smart clouds. And you can see this front out here, and I believe that's the storm that we see. And these clouds here are probably just air currents being pulled into the storm. So you can see autopilot is having to keep adjust our vertical altitude every time a gust of wind will force us up or down. It's going to have to continually making adjustments to keep us at the correct altitude and the correct heading, so we're flying in the correct direction. So we're 1 minute and 15 seconds from our next waypoint, which is this one right here, Londo. Right here. Yeah. Hello, Londo. It's nice to know you. So once again, the wind has turned into a crosswind, but doesn't seem to be slowing us down a whole lot. Looks like we've maxed out at 322 nautical miles per hour. Alright, we're at Londo and we're making our turn. And there's the cloud formation that we can see on radar here. So far it's all below us, beneath us, so we don't have to worry about flying into it, losing sight of the ground, at least not yet, but we'll see how this other front kind of shakes out for us as we get closer to it. Total flight time right now is 1 hour and 5 minutes, and see how interesting things get here in about the next 50 to 100 miles. Hopefully not too crazy, but just never know. So before, the winds were running northwest to southeast, and they kind of flattened out and headed east to west. And now they've almost spun around 180 degrees and are coming out of the southwest headed northeast. So I'm not a meteorologist, so my understanding of basic meteorology is fairly rudimental, but I'd imagine these are because of this cloud formation here that's causing a difference in temperatures, which are causing the wind to move in a different direction because of this system right here. So, not sure if I'm right, but in my mind it feels pretty close, so we'll just go with it for the time being until someone tells me different. All part of the learning experience. So people have asked me if I fly in real life. My answer is no. I've never flown in real life. I've never been the pilot in real life. I've definitely flown. Years and years and years ago, I used to jump out of airplanes as a hobby, skydiving. And a friend of mine, Tom, when I was stationed in Biloxi, Mississippi back in the 80s for my training school, lived there for almost a year, and one day he was talking to me when we were out at the Airmen's Club drinking beer, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And tomorrow was Saturday, and I said, "I'm not doing anything. What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm gonna go skydiving." And I looked at him and I said, "You're crazy. You jump out of a perfectly good aircraft." And yeah, I was 17 when I entered the military, and I was still 17 at that time. And I said, "No, I don't think I want to do that. It sounds dangerous." And he goes, "Well, there'll be some pretty girls there." I said, "Well, what time are you picking me up?" So he was in school to be an air traffic controller, and it was his instructor who had some friends that ran a private airfield in not Biloxi, but Mobile, Alabama, and he got us a really good discount. So back in 1987, the first jump included, hang on a second. Coffee time. Back in 1987, the first jump, including ground training school, which was about 6 hours, came with free lunch, and it also included your first jump. It was $120, and I have no idea what it is today, but $120 I felt was a really good deal for the value. And they told us if you want to make a second and third jump, each jump would be I think they said $40, and it would be $25 if we wanted to fold and pack our own parachutes, with instruction, of course. And I said, no, I'd care not to set myself up for a failure. And it was getting fairly late in the day. I think by the time we landed, it was about 4 p.m. and it was in September, and yeah, getting close to sunset. So I said, no, the one jump at that time was just fine. But I made many more over the years, thoroughly enjoyed it, and ended up putting it down once I got married. My wife had asked me if I would not do that anymore, and I said, yeah, I can do that. So haven't jumped since, but I do love the flight sim, and thoroughly enjoy making these virtual flights. So we can see the clouds up ahead are starting to form up, thicken up. And I'm not sure what level those clouds are. Let's see if we can, looks like out to 200 miles anyways, everything is below us. But I'm not sure if this stuff is above us. So it's hard to see where that is in relation to our altitude. So no more here, probably about 25 minutes or less, so we'll see how things unfold as we continue our journey to the east. looks like our window is starting to ice up right here. So now I'm curious what would have happened if we turn the heat all the way up. And we turn our windscreen de-ice up a little bit. We turn our fan on max. I'm wondering if that ice will begin to melt right here. Let's keep an eye on that and see what happens. It's amazing how much moisture is in the air up here. I thought it would be pretty dry, but there's definitely something, as we can see it forming on our side windscreen right here. So this is all ice starting to form. Our wings are free and clear, both left and right. You can see down here we have our airframe de-ice on, our prop de-ice, and our windshield de-ice. We'll see how this shakes out as we move further into this storm up here. Now that looks angry. This guy looks angry. And I am glad we're not flying through this. That looks like a nightmare. Unfolding right there. About 50, 60 miles ahead of us. So you see here on weather radar, we're starting to pick up some bands or these pockets of moisture that are denser than the rest of the clouds around them. And green is, fairly loose clouds. Yellow is more dense, and red is even denser. And that usually turns out to there being moisture in the air. So I'd imagine where we see this yellow, we can probably see there being a lot more moisture. So if we were to fly through that, we could end up with ice developing on our propeller and our wings. Both situations are not good. They can result in a crash. If too much ice builds up on the leading edges of the wings, we can lose the ability to generate lift. So we'll start to descend until the ice melts off. And usually if ice builds up on your wings due to either a failure of your de-icing systems, or there just being a grotesque amount of moisture at a very low temperature, we'd have to descend to that point, get below 10,000 feet where the air is much warmer to allow it to melt off and then just stay down there. So that's why I'm hoping we can get above those clouds. And it looks like by eye that they're at our level. But if we look at the radar here, and here's those denser pockets of rain that we saw, denser pockets of clouds, everything appears to be below us. Because our altitude, if we put the mouse pointer right in the middle of that scale, is going to be right about there, about level with the dot. So we're barely above them. Not by much, but I'll take it and be happy with it. That thing goes on for miles in either direction, so it is massive. North to south, this cloud formation is actually bigger than Greenland. So I don't know how many miles Greenland is north to south, but I'm sure it's more than a couple hundred. So if that gives you an idea of scale, it's a pretty big cloud formation. are 1 hour and 17 minutes into the flight, and let's see where we are on the map. This tiny map is just too small. Let's open the VFR map, which is the Visual Flight Regulations map, or the ground map. And that's all we can see on it. So I can't see any land over here, but oh, never mind. I was doing it wrong. So we're not going to see anything for a long time. We're approaching our next checkpoint here on GPS. Our flight plan, and that's this checkpoint right here, and then we've got almost 100 miles before we hit that checkpoint, then 100 miles to that one. So from where we are to reach these two checkpoints, if that's 200 nautical miles, should be about 40 minutes, and then from here on in probably be about another, I would say, 40 minutes, because we're going to have to slow down and start our descent into the area for our landing at the Keflavik. So, yeah, I think overall we probably have about 2 hours remaining in the flight time today on the flight plan, so I don't think we're going to make it early like I originally was hoping for. Anyways, just as long as I don't crash or get knocked out of the sky by a lightning bolt or ice building up, we should be okay. I'm going to mute the microphone and step away for a few minutes, but I'll be right back. Looks like we're going to begin our journey into the clouds here. So it appears that most of them are below us. There might be some that are at the same flight level as us, so we'll see how everything shakes out as we move forward. If it looks like we have ice building up, we'll try to get ahead, above them. I can't really tell if that ice melted off the windshield there, the side window, from turning the heat on. It's hard to see with very low difference in contrast, so it kind of looks like it disappeared, but I'm not 100% sure. leveled clouds. Bye-bye, blue sky. Well, these aren't too bad. I don't think there's any need to increase our altitude, so we'll just stay down here. Or we'll stay at our current altitude.
019er contact Reykjavik Center on 125.5. Good day.
Good day.
125.5 for Doppler 019er. Reykjavik Center Doppler Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, flight level 280.
Doppler Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, Reykjavik Center, continue to depth to as planned.
And Devnu is our next waypoint, which we've just crossed right here. And we can see there's some nasty storms right here. I'm not sure what's down to the south here, but I'm glad we're not going to be flying through that. Instead, looks like we're kind of splitting through the middle of both parts of this storm, so, or cloud formation. I'm not going to call it a storm, but so that's good. There's some comfort in that. We'll have these Birk clouds to fly through probably for the next 20 minutes, and looks like clear skies are awaiting us on the other side of them. So. Total flight time so far is 1 hour and 26 minutes. If we proceed as follows, according to flight plan, we have about another 2 hours remaining in the flight. So we'll use that as our estimate for arrival time. Right now it's 10:30 a.m. East Coast time. I think we're 2 hours ahead of that where we're at right now. Let's check really quick. Yeah, 12:30 p.m. So we're half hour into the afternoon. We should be landing ahead of sunset. I believe the sun starts to set around 5 p.m. at this point on this day today. Maybe on our next flight, I'll try to plan it to where we can have like a dawn landing, take off at night, and arrive around sunrise or shortly thereafter. There's a interesting opening right there. Kind of looks like a block of cheese. Wow. I would not want to be stuck in that gray mess we see right there. That'll give you a bad day in a small aircraft. Maybe even a large one as well, so. And we can see the crosswinds are picking back up. Everything died down to about 24 knots. It's picked back up to 36, so we'll keep an eye on that. But I think the worst the storm has to offer is north of us, and looks like we're going to pick up some clear blue sky here in about the next 10 minutes or so. Once we cross this point right here, everything will kind of open up. And it closes back up a few minutes after that, so we'll see how that unfolds minute by minute. But I'm not expecting anything too crazy or outlandish or out of the norm, so. But just for safety's sake, we'll make sure everything's not too bad. We'll make a deviation of course if required. Our true airspeed is 323 knots, so we're moving at a good clip. Yeah, we're moving about 373 miles per hour, I think is how this shakes out. I just muted to do a quick calculation, and I think about 370 miles per hour is what 323 knots shakes out to be. So yeah, we're actually moving pretty fast. Almost 400 miles per hour. Of all the aircraft in the library available for me to fly, this is the fastest propeller aircraft, and I like that. It has a pretty decent range. Its published range is 1,700 nautical miles, roughly. However, due to the way the software is programmed, I don't think we're quite hitting that. But we'll see what the fuel load is when we land, and I'll have a better idea of what we burnt on the way over. And although the consumption rate of 56 gallons per hour seems pretty high, if we have enough fuel for a roughly 6.5 hour flight, if we fly 3.5 hours and land, we should have about a little over a third of a tank of fuel on both left and right fuel tanks. So we'll see how closely we meet that expectation. Alright, we're in the soup now. We lost almost all visibility. We have a little bit to the left and to the right, a little bit ahead, above, but we'll probably be in the blind here for about another minute or so. And we should pop out into some blue sky here in just a few. Go. Clear skies and 100% visibility, at least for a few minutes. You can see here on the GPS map, we just came out, and this is this right here. And then if we look at this total distance, is about 3 times the distance of this. I don't think we're going to be in these clouds very long, maybe 10 minutes tops. And on the other side, we reach our next waypoint, which is this one right here, SOSIT, S-O-S-I-T. So. There's that break right here on radar as well. Which is what we're about ready to open up into. So we burned through about 33% of our fuel, and we're only an hour and 40 minutes into the flight. So that would indicate our total flight time is roughly 5 hours, and that's about 2 hours short actually on what we should be getting for actual fuel consumption. So at this point, I'm going to I'd be willing to bet one of my fingers and maybe even a couple toes that we're burning fuel faster than what we would in a real life airframe, the same airframe we're flying now, the TBM 930. So we'll be able to either verify or disprove that once we land, but I'm going to expect that we're going to land fairly low on fuel. If we look at the fuel gauges right here, we have left tank and right tank, and our co-pilot, what she will do is move this switch every so many minutes between left and right fuel tank. That way I don't forget to do that. And some airframes have an automatic selector. You just put it on automatic and it stays there and does its thing. But on this aircraft here, you physically have to switch between left and right to keep that balance. So you definitely don't want to burn too much out of one tank or the other, because then the airframe gets too heavy on one side and very unstable. So it becomes dangerous to do everything from taking off to flying to landing. So we don't want to make a mess on the ground below us. So. But every 10 minutes you hear this click, and that's the co-pilot, aka my wife, or the digital representation of her switching between left and right tanks. So. We are 10 minutes out from the next waypoint on the map, which is this guy right here. So in 10 minutes we'll be reaching that waypoint, and if we look at our navigation map, this is this waypoint, SOSIT, and this is the last waypoint we're going to be at cruising altitude. So when we approach this waypoint, I'd imagine at some point before we cross over it, the ground is going to instruct us to start our descent to 15,050 feet, or 15,850. Sorry. So I don't think we have the capability to do 50-foot increments, so we'll just dial in 15,800. There we are right there. And that'll be our altitude that we cruise at until we approach the western coast of Iceland and begin our initial approach into the area for landing at Birk Airport in Reykjavik, Greenland. So if we stay true to the remainder of the flight plan, we have roughly 1 hour and 40 minutes remaining in the flight. My allergies been acting up the last couple weeks, so. So we just synchronized, oh, clumsy. Just synchronized our heading bug, which is this blue thing right here. And it has a knob right here where it can manually dial in anything. And at the moment, it's not going to do really anything by us just moving this wheel. And you can see here, we have a course selected of 60 degrees 060, and if we were to push this button, it would tell autopilot to stop with GPS navigation and go to course selection navigation. So what would happen, the quickest way from to get to our heading, our current heading of 114 degrees to 60 degrees, is to make a left turn. So if we push this button, we'll immediately begin to make a left turn, and it'll fly this course or this heading. But we don't want that, so what we do is we just push that once, and it causes that little blue thing, which is called a bug, to line up with our actual heading. So we're flying 114, and our selected heading, according to the bug, is now 114. I didn't do it earlier, that was my bad, I forgot, but the reason for that is if we do lose GPS, hang on a second. If we do lose GPS, then we'll still maintain our course through the heading bug selection. And there's been a few times, one time where I had to make a manual landing on the last flight, and there was one time where I flew as the first leg on this journey, flying from Raleigh-Durham to Westfield, Springfield, Massachusetts. I didn't realize that after the last update, which is version 6 of the software, that they made a change that over 18,000 feet in the United States, you have to set your barometric pressure to sea level, which is 29.92. And prior to that, you could select indicated by the ground pressures, and everything was fine. No warnings were indicated or tripped. And then after version 6 for my first flight, it was just giving me warning after warning after warning after warning. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was me or the software. So after I completed that flight, I started to check it out, and I learned a little bit about actual aviation. Is that in the United States and some other parts of the world, once you reach 18,000 feet, you have to switch to sea level barometric pressure, which is 29.92 inches of mercury, as indicated right here and right there. See, right here. And prior up to the update, you didn't have to do that. So, me not being a real pilot, not a real world pilot anyways, I had to figure out what was causing that. Once I learned that, I actually learned something new, that the flight simulator is following the actual rules of aviation. So, you know, not knowing that, it was error after error after error, but knowing that now, it's simple as either setting those manually, which you set barometric pressure here on the old whiskey style gauge, and you set barometric pressure here on your digital instrumentation. And I didn't know that. So yeah, once I figured that out, it was pretty simple. On the keyboard, once you exceed 18,000 feet, you just hit the B key, B for Bravo, and it sets your pressure to what should be indicated. So if you're over 18,000, it defaults to 29.92 inches, and below 18,000 feet is as indicated by the ground station. So yeah, that was it was a pain, but I think anytime you learn something from a situation, you end up being a better person from it. In this case, a better digital pilot. So, anyways, just my 2 cents on the that part of the learning experience. Looks like we're about a minute from our next checkpoint, waypoint here, 1 minute 38 seconds. And as I mentioned earlier, according to the flight plan, this is the last waypoint. We'll be traveling at 27 or 28,000 feet. So, yeah. We are 1 hour and 50 minutes into the flight, and at least on the VFR map, which is visual flight regulations, we're not flying a VFR flight plan, we're flying IFR, which is instrument flight regulations. And all those 2 acronyms really mean is there's 2 sets of rules for general aviation. So VFR means you are navigating through some instrumentation. They're usually simple gauges that point to a direction on a ordinal or a compass background. Much like this right here, you can see all these compass ordinals or points on the compass from 0 degrees all the way back around to 0, 90, 180, 270, and everything in between. So this leg right here that we just turned on to is 26 minutes. So in 26 minutes, I would expect us to start our preparations for our initial approach, and we should be on the ground probably about a half hour or so after that. So about 1 hour-ish of flight time remaining. So, and I forgot what I was talking about. I was talking about ordinals and stuff like that. So I don't know. It'll come back to me. Sometimes I lose track of where I'm at when I start getting the side details that seem to be tangential to the conversation but have no bearing on the outcome or result thereof. So, but that's just how my crazy mind works. So, anyways. Anywho. So from this point, zoom in just a little bit, from here to here, if we look, it looks like it's about half the distance of the current leg that we're on. And if our current leg is roughly 26 minutes, that means from here to here should be roughly 13 minutes. So if we're going to have to descend from 28,000 to 15,000 feet, roughly, we've got 13,000 feet to descend in 13 minutes. So we could set our descent rate at 1,000 feet per minute or a sync rate, and that would put us right at posted or advertised altitude at 15,800 time allotted. However, it's always good in my mind anyways. I'm not sure how this works in general aviation in the real world, but I prefer to make that descent a little bit faster just to reach that altitude and level out. I think in the real world, when you have a professional pilot, co-pilot, it's pretty easy to continue transitions in altitude. But I like to level out and make adjustments to throttle and fuel mixture and those things. So I prefer to approach those checkpoints a little bit ahead of time. So what we'll do is we'll set our descent or sync rate to about 1,200, 1,300 feet per minute, and we'll begin our descent. And we shouldn't need flaps or anything crazy like that until we have to slow down for the beginning of our initial approach. And that will not happen until we reach this point right here. So I'm not sure what the flight plan is calling for at all of the posted altitudes, but I think this is 5,000 feet or something similar to that. And that can change depending on weather conditions and what we're instructed to hold at by ground. So yeah, I just like to arrive early ahead of what the plan is calling for. That way I have a few minutes to make any changes that might be necessary and to enjoy the ride. So. "22 minutes remaining in this leg. Our actual airspeed, or our true airspeed, is 323 knots. So still trucking along at roughly 370 miles per hour. That's one of the things I love about this aircraft, being a turboprop. It's almost as fast as some of the smaller jets. I think the citation that comes with this sim has a cruising speed of roughly 450 nautical miles per hour, 450 knots. So that's close to 500 miles per hour, so about 66% the speed of sound, or 70%. So that would be like Mach 0.7. We don't measure airspeed in Mach units in propeller aircraft because we just don't go that fast. There's no reason to measure it that way. But if we wanted to, we could break out a calculator and calculate that. And I think we're traveling about 0.42 Mach, so not so impressive, but it is what it is. But as far as propeller aircraft go, that means we're moving pretty fast. Most of the other prop aircraft in the simulator usually top out, I think, around 250 nautical miles per hour at cruising speeds. So yeah, this one here travels a little bit faster than that, which is nice, especially when traveling long distances. You know, we can make, let's say, Charleston, South Carolina to Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina is roughly about an hour and 30 minutes, flying the advertised flight plans. And if we were flying a slower aircraft, something that would move around 240 nautical miles an hour, that flight time would be extended on out to roughly 2 hours or so. So on a short flight, it doesn't make too much difference, but on a long flight, that's the difference of hours. So, plus those aircraft don't have the legs to make the distance. They generally top out around 800 nautical miles, 900 nautical miles for total range. This airframe, the TBM 930, has a advertised range of right around 1,735 nautical miles. But as I've mentioned a few times before, the software doesn't calculate fuel consumption quite right, so it's much less than that. So, yep. be right back in a few minutes. Alright, we're back. I had a few things to take care of. Had some dry laundry in the dryer and one load to go in the washer, so I want to get that knocked out before my wife gets home. And then it's outside to do some yard work. It's a beautiful day. It's been raining on and off for the last 2 weeks. The last 2 weekends have been nothing but rain. This is the first one with sun, so we're going to take advantage of that and burn some yard waste. So by yard waste, I mean branches, sticks, logs, that kind of stuff. Nothing hazardous, but it's always fun for us. Once every 4 to 6 weeks or so, once we have enough wood to burn, to once it's going, just to sit around the fire and enjoy the weather, crack open a few beers, and just watch the world go by. So that's what we plan on doing this afternoon. Once I finish this flight, excuse me, I'll have to go outside and break out the chainsaw and clear some trees out. But yeah, that's the part I don't like doing, but it's always fun at the tail end to crack open some beers and hang out by little bonfires. So that's the reward for doing the stuff I don't want to do. So not looking forward to it, but I'll be definitely looking forward to the bonfire that's going to happen later on tonight. So anyways, looks like we have about 10 minutes, 6 minutes and 30 seconds exactly before we hit our, I'm not going to call it the final checkpoint, but the beginning of our initial approach to the local area. Not sure if that's coming through, but I've got my scanner on. That's something coming in on the marine band, which I don't usually pick up. We're really far inland, like 150, 200 miles. So I'm not sure what's going on off the coast. Kind of interesting to see something on that.
$019 or descend and maintain flight level 190.
Alright. Let's turn the real radio off.
And maintain flight level 190 Docker 019.
Let's start our descent. Oh, first I'm gonna put my glasses on. Alright. And I think they instructed us to flight level 180. We'll get that dialed in. Alright, down we go. Alright, this marks the beginning of our initial approach into the area. We're descending on to flight level 180 and then probably 150 below that. And then when we reach the coast, we'll probably descend down to 5,000. And we should be on the ground here, I think, in about 40 minutes or so. So hang on. If you have a brewski open, I'd recommend shotgunning it before stuff starts to get real bumpy. Or I start to get a little trembly on the flight controls. So. Alright, into the soup we go. So we've got 38 miles to our next waypoint on the map, and we should make our altitude with lots of time to spare. Our sync rate is minus 1,500 feet per minute, so that means every minute we're going to lose 1,500 feet of altitude. And I had to retard the throttle a little bit to keep us from overspeeding. see where the bottoms are on the clouds. We should be through them in a few minutes. Be right back.
Please expedite your climb flight level 190.
190, okay.
Please expedite your climb flight level 190.
'" I thought they called out 180 earlier, but they didn't. It was 190. My fault. Cool clouds though. Look at that.
$019, please expedite your climb flight level 190. Please expedite your climb flight level 190.
Okay, not this stuff again. Barometer's set. And I'm looking for clearance to change altitude, and it's not there. I should have an option to request an altitude change, and oh, that just burns me.
climb flight level 190.
Yeah, we're at flight level 190.
Reykjavik Center Donner Foxtrot, Mike 1019er requesting vector to next waypoint.
Donner 019er continue to Arcade 401 turning and following heading 090. Resume on navigation.
Continue to Arcade 401 turning and following heading 090. Proceed on course Donner 019er.
Donner 019er, you are 2 flight miles northwest. Descend and maintain 7,000 feet. Keep speed not above 240 knots. Expect ILS Zulu runway 19er approach by a Mi'kmaq transition. Clear to Mi'kmaq. Donner 019er, descend and maintain 3,600 feet. Keep speed not above 240 knots.
Alright,
Descend and
3,600.
maintain 3,600 feet. Keep speed not above 240 knots. Expect ILS Zulu runway 19er approach via Mi'kmaq transition. Clear to Mi'kmaq Donner 019er.
So we're going to make a fairly rapid descent. Let's reduce throttle to minimum. Propellers trimmed.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
Lightning. That was different. We have roughly 4 minutes before we descend to our selected altitude of 3,600 feet. That should put us just about halfway past this checkpoint. So by the time we reach here, we'll be turning on for our final approach.
Donner 019er, keep speed not above 210 knots.
Keep speed not above 210 knots. Donner 019er.
Donner 019er, contact Reykjavik approach on 119.0. Good day.
119.0 for Donner 019er. Reykjavik approach Donner Foxtrot Mike 1019er is passing 11,900 feet, descending 3,600 feet.
Air Foxtrot Mike 1019er, Reykjavik approach altimeter 29.15. Continue to Exyno as planned.
Alright, we're on actual. Landing lights on.
Dare 019er, you are 14 miles north of Reykjavik. Contact Reykjavik Tower on 118.0 when inbound on the approach.
Tower on 118.0 Docker 019er. Reykjavik Tower Docker Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, 13 miles north inbound ILS Nuuk runway 19er approach. Docker Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, Reykjavik Tower. Altimeter 29.15, wind 113 at 12. Cleared ILS, Nuuk runway 19er approach. Cleared ILS, Nuuk runway 19er approach Docker 019er.
Alright, we'll have to prep for final here in just a few minutes. Sounds like rain. Flaps down.
Landing gear.
Flaps fully deployed, gear down, throttles up. Slowing down for landing. Would be nice to see the ground, but not truly required. Seat locked, full forward position, coffee levels, let's recalibrate. Okay.
Reykjavik Tower Docker Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, is unfamiliar with the area. Request directions to the airport. Docker 019er Airport is 11 o'clock 3 miles.
We're supposed to have ILS here, instrument landing systems, and they don't. So we're going to have to declare a missed approach.
Tower Docker Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, is going missed. Docker 019er, contact Reykjavik approach on 119er, decimal 0. Good day. Going to 119er, decimal 0 Docker 019er.
Alright, I'm happy I can see ground now. Not happy that the ILS system here didn't bring us in. So, I don't know what's up with that. But, what doesn't kill us only makes us stronger. So they say anyways. The airport should be right here. We should be passing it in another minute or so. And it could be quite possible that the altitude...
Reykjavik approach Docker Foxtrot, Mike 1019er, is missed approach at Reykjavik.
Dare 019er, climb and maintain 13,000 feet.
No.
Dare 019er, climb and maintain 13,000 feet. Dare 019er, climb and maintain flight level 200.
Yes.
Dare 019er, climb and maintain flight level 200. Dare 019er, you are 2 miles east. Climb and maintain 3,500 feet. Expect ILS Yankee runway 19er approach via Romeo Kilo transition. Cleared to Romeo Kilo.
Climb and maintain 3,500 feet. Expect ILS Yankee runway 19er approach via Romeo Kilo transition. Cleared to Romeo Kilo Donner 019er.
Okay. 3,500.
Landing gear.
So our approach point, Romeo Kilo, is right here. All right, gear back down.
Landing gear.
Got to get below these clouds. Nope. Does that count as landing? I don't think so.
Aural warning. Okay. Landing gear.
Well,
Landing gear. Landing gear. Landing
now I gotta look into that as to why
landing gear.
this airport
Landing gear.
publishes
Landing gear.
instrument landing services
Landing gear.
and doesn't offer them. There was no ILS to bring us in through this weather when there should have been ILS to bring us in. And we never intercepted the glide slope. And oh well. It was a great flight. I'm gonna post this video as is, and I hope you enjoy.